What if I told you that 6 simple words, spoken before sleep each night, could fundamentally transform your entire life? Carl Jung, the revolutionary psychiatrist who mapped the depths of the human psyche, discovered a powerful practice that can unlock your unconscious wisdom and accelerate your psychological healing in ways that seem almost magical. These aren't just any 6 words. They're a specific phrase that Jung developed through decades of working with patients, particularly women, who were struggling with anxiety, depression, and a profound sense of disconnection from their authentic selves. Jung understood that the moments before sleep are when our conscious defenses are lowest and our unconscious mind is most receptive to transformation. The 6 words are, "I trust my unconscious to guide me." But before you dismiss this as too simple to be effective, understand that Jung viewed these words as what he called a bridge to the self, a direct pathway to accessing the wisdom that lies beyond our everyday conscious awareness. Jung believed that women, in particular, have been culturally conditioned to distrust their inner knowing, their intuition, and their connection to what he called the collective unconscious. We've been taught to seek answers outside ourselves, to defer to external authorities, and to doubt the wisdom that naturally arises from our deepest psyche. If you're ready to discover how this simple practice can transform your relationship with yourself and unlock potentials you never knew existed, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're exploring the profound intersection of Jungian psychology and feminine awakening, and you won't want to miss what's coming. These 6 words work because they address what Jung called the fundamental split, the disconnection between our conscious ego and our unconscious wisdom. For most of us, especially women who have been conditioned to override their instincts, this split creates constant internal conflict, anxiety, and a sense that we're living someone else's life rather than our own. Consider Sarah, a 38-year-old teacher who had been struggling with chronic insomnia and decision paralysis for years. Every night, her mind would race with worries, doubts, and endless mental chatter about what she should do with her life. When she began speaking these 6 words before sleep, something extraordinary began to happen. Her dreams became more vivid and meaningful, her intuition stronger, and most remarkably, solutions to problems that had plagued her for months began appearing effortlessly. Jung understood that the unconscious mind doesn't operate like our rational, linear consciousness. It communicates through symbols, dreams, synchronicities, and what he called the prospective function, the ability to perceive potential futures and guide us toward our highest development. By consciously inviting this guidance before sleep, we create what Jung called a conscious collaboration with the unconscious. The power of these words lies not just in their meaning, but in the act of surrender they represent, the willingness to trust something larger and wiser than our everyday thinking mind. The reason these 6 words are so transformative lies in Jung's understanding of what he called the ego's tyranny, the way our conscious mind tries to control and micromanage every aspect of our experience, often leading to exhaustion, anxiety, and disconnection from our authentic nature. For women especially, this tyranny is compounded by societal conditioning that demands we be perpetually vigilant, always anticipating others' needs, and constantly second-guessing our own instincts. Jung discovered that the word trust in this context doesn't mean passive resignation or blind faith. Instead, it represents what he called active receptivity, a conscious choice to create space for wisdom that transcends our limited ego perspective. When you say, "I trust my unconscious to guide me," you're essentially telling your psyche that you're ready to receive information from deeper layers of your being. The unconscious that Jung refers to isn't some mysterious mystical realm. It's the vast intelligence of your psyche that processes millions of pieces of information below the threshold of consciousness. It includes your accumulated life experience, your ancestral wisdom, your connection to archetypal patterns, and what he called the self, the organizing principle of your entire psychological system. Take Elena, a successful attorney who had built her entire identity around rational analysis and logical problem solving. She prided herself on never making emotional decisions and always having a plan. But this hyper-rational approach had left her feeling empty and disconnected from her own desires. When she began using Jung's 6 words before sleep, she initially felt uncomfortable with the idea of trusting anything beyond her analytical mind. However, after just 2 weeks of practice, Elena began experiencing what Jung called compensatory dreams. Dreams that provided perspectives and insights that her conscious mind had been unable to access. She dreamed of herself as a dancer, something she had loved as a child but abandoned for being impractical. The dream was so vivid and emotionally powerful that she decided to take a dance class, which eventually led her to discover a passion for movement therapy and a complete career transformation. Jung understood that our unconscious mind has what he called a superior knowledge because it's not limited by the fears, conditioning, and defensive patterns that constrain our conscious thinking. It can see connections we miss, perceive possibilities we've dismissed, and access creative solutions that our rational mind considers impossible. The act of speaking these words before sleep creates what Jung called a ritual of surrender, a conscious gesture that signals to your psyche that you're ready to release control and receive guidance. This is particularly powerful for women who have been taught to distrust their intuition and defer to external authority. For many women, the greatest obstacle to transformation isn't lack of knowledge or resources. It's the inability to trust their own inner knowing. We've been conditioned to believe that our thoughts, feelings, and instincts are unreliable, that we need external validation to make decisions, and that our deepest wisdom is somehow less valuable than expert opinions or cultural expectations. These 6 words begin to heal this fundamental wound by re-establishing your relationship with your own inner authority. They remind you that you have access to a source of wisdom that knows your authentic path better than any external guide ever could. Jung understood that the transition into sleep represents what he called the sacred gateway, a liminal space where the boundary between conscious and unconscious is blurred and unconscious becomes permeable, allowing for profound psychological transformation. This is why speaking these 6 words before sleep is so much more powerful than saying them at any other time of day. During the pre-sleep state, what Jung called the ego's defenses naturally begin to dissolve. The critical, analytical mind that normally filters and judges every thought starts to quiet, creating what he termed a receptive vessel for unconscious wisdom to emerge. This is the optimal time to plant seeds of intention that can grow and flourish in the fertile soil of the unconscious mind. For women, this practice is particularly transformative because it honors what Jung called the feminine principle, the receptive, intuitive, cyclical nature of consciousness that has been devalued in our predominantly masculine culture. Instead of trying to force solutions through willpower and analysis, you're allowing wisdom to emerge naturally, like water finding its course. Consider Miranda, a mother of 2 who had been struggling with overwhelming anxiety about her children's futures. Every night, she would lie awake creating worst-case scenarios and trying to mentally prepare for every possible challenge her kids might face. This constant mental vigilance was exhausting her and, ironically, making her less present and effective as a mother. When Miranda began speaking Jung's 6 words before sleep, she initially felt guilty, as if she was abandoning her responsibility to worry and plan. But gradually, something beautiful began to happen. Her dreams started providing her with insights about her children's unique gifts and potentials, rather than focusing on problems and dangers. She began to trust that her unconscious wisdom could guide her parenting decisions more effectively than her anxious conscious mind. Within a month, Miranda noticed that she was responding to her children with more intuitive understanding, making decisions that felt aligned rather than reactive, and most importantly, modeling a sense of trust in life's unfolding, rather than constant fear and control. Jung believed that during sleep, our consciousness connects with what he called the collective unconscious, the vast repository of human wisdom and archetypal knowledge that exists beyond individual experience. This is why dreams often contain symbols, images, and insights that feel larger than our personal understanding. The 6 words create what Jung called an intentional bridge to this deeper realm. By consciously stating your trust in unconscious guidance before sleep, you're essentially programming your psyche to be receptive to wisdom from these deeper layers during the dream state. This practice also activates what Jung called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that allows us to integrate conscious and unconscious material, creating new possibilities that neither realm could access alone. The solutions, insights, and creative breakthroughs that emerge from this integration often feel like gifts from some benevolent intelligence. Jung observed that women who practice this consistently begin to experience what he called synchronistic guidance, meaningful coincidences and signs that seem to respond to their unconscious requests for direction. This isn't magical thinking, but rather the natural result of being attuned to the subtle patterns and connections that the unconscious mind perceives, but the conscious mind typically misses. The sleep state becomes a laboratory for psychological transformation, where old patterns can be dissolved and new possibilities can be born without the interference of conscious resistance or limiting beliefs. Jung observed that when women consistently practice speaking these 6 words before sleep, they undergo what he called the reactivation of the feminine self, a profound reconnection with archetypal feminine wisdom that has been suppressed by patriarchal conditioning. This isn't about gender roles or stereotypes, but rather about reclaiming access to intuitive, cyclical, and receptive ways of knowing that exist within every woman's psyche. The transformation typically unfolds in 3 distinct phases that Jung documented in his work with female patients. The first phase involves what he called the dissolution of false personas, the masks we've worn to be acceptable in a world that hasn't traditionally valued feminine wisdom. As you begin trusting your unconscious guidance, the exhausting effort of maintaining these personas starts to feel unbearable. Consider Jessica, a marketing executive who had spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder by adopting what she thought were masculine traits: aggression, competition, and emotional suppression. When she began Jung's practice, her first month of dreams were filled with images of herself removing layers of armor and clothing, symbolically shedding the protective barriers she'd built around her authentic nature. As Jessica continued the practice, she entered Jung's second phase, the emergence of authentic desires. Dreams and synchronicities began revealing aspects of herself she had completely forgotten: her love of gardening, her desire to mentor young women, her need for creative expression through writing. These weren't new interests, but recovered parts of her original nature that had been buried under years of conditioning. The third phase Jung called the integration of feminine authority, the development of confidence in one's own inner knowing rather than seeking validation from external sources. Jessica began making decisions based on how things felt rather than how they looked on paper. She turned down a promotion that felt wrong despite its prestige, and instead started a consulting business that aligned with her values and allowed her to work with female entrepreneurs. Jung understood that this trust in unconscious guidance specifically heals what he called the wounded feminine, the collective trauma women carry from centuries of being told their intuition is unreliable, their emotions are problematic, and their ways of knowing are inferior to rational, linear thinking. The 6 words work as what Jung called an archetypal healing formula because they directly address the core wound, the severed connection between conscious identity and feminine wisdom. Every time you speak these words, you're essentially saying to your psyche, "I value and trust the feminine principle within me." This practice particularly transforms women's relationship with decision-making. Instead of the exhausting process of pros and cons lists, seeking endless advice, and second-guessing every choice, women begin to access what Jung called the wisdom of the body, the ability to know what's right through felt sense rather than mental analysis. Many women report that after practicing this consistently, they begin to experience what Jung called prophetic dreams, not supernatural predictions, but rather the unconscious mind's ability to synthesize complex information and perceive probable outcomes in ways that bypass conscious limitations. The transformation extends beyond personal healing into what Jung called cultural healing. Women who reconnect with their unconscious wisdom become what he termed carriers of the feminine principle, individuals who can help restore balance to a world that has become overly masculine in its orientation toward force, control, and domination. This isn't about rejecting rational thinking or becoming passive. Rather, it's about integrating both modes of consciousness so that logic and intuition, analysis and feeling, planning and receptivity can work together in what Jung called the sacred marriage of masculine and feminine principles within the individual psyche. Modern neuroscience has validated what Jung intuitively understood about the power of pre-sleep suggestion and unconscious processing. When we speak these 6 words before sleep, we're actually engaging what researchers call targeted memory reactivation, a process where specific neural pathways are strengthened during the consolidation phase of sleep. Dr. Rosalind Cartwright's groundbreaking research on dream psychology confirms Jung's observations about the unconscious mind's problem-solving abilities. During REM sleep, the brain creates new neural connections, processes emotional material, and generates creative solutions that weren't accessible during waking consciousness. By setting a clear intention with Jung's 6 words, you're essentially programming this natural process to focus on guidance and wisdom rather than random mental processing. Consider Angela, a successful architect who had been struggling with a creative block for months. Every project felt formulaic and uninspiring despite her technical expertise. She had tried changing her work environment, taking breaks, and even consulting with other architects, but nothing seemed to break through her creative stagnation. When Angela began practicing Jung's 6 words before sleep, something remarkable happened within the first week. Her dreams became filled with architectural visions, not just buildings, but entire cityscapes that seemed to pulse with organic life. In one particularly vivid dream, she found herself designing structures that grew like trees, with root systems that connected underground. When she woke, she immediately sketched what she remembered, and those sketches became the foundation for a revolutionary sustainable architecture project that would define the next phase of her career. What neuroscience tells us is that Angela's unconscious mind was able to synthesize her knowledge of architecture, biology, and environmental science in ways her conscious mind couldn't achieve through forced effort. The 6 words created what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the ability to think beyond established patterns and access novel solutions. Jung's practice also activates what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a brain system that becomes active during rest and introspection. This network is associated with self-referential thinking, moral decision-making, and what researchers term autobiographical planning, the ability to envision and create your authentic future rather than simply reacting to circumstances. For women, this neurological process is particularly powerful because it bypasses the cultural conditioning that often interferes with intuitive decision-making. When the analytical judgmental parts of the brain quiet down during the pre-sleep state, the deeper wisdom networks can function without interference from limiting beliefs or social expectations. The consistency of this practice creates what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways. Each night that you speak these words, You're literally rewiring your brain to trust internal guidance over external validation, to value intuitive knowing alongside rational analysis, and to access creative solutions that emerge from integration rather than force. Research on meditation and contemplative practices shows that regular engagement with trust-based intentions actually changes brain structure over time, strengthening areas associated with emotional regulation, creative thinking, and what researchers call interoceptive awareness, the ability to perceive internal signals from your body and psyche. This is why women who practice Jung's 6 words consistently report not just better decision-making, but also improved physical health, more satisfying relationships, and a greater sense of purpose and meaning in their lives. They're not just changing their thoughts, they're literally transforming their neurological capacity for wisdom and well-being. The ultimate goal of Jung's 6-word practice isn't just better sleep or more vivid dreams. It's what he called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are rather than who you've been conditioned to be. For women, this journey often involves reclaiming aspects of themselves that were sacrificed for acceptance, safety, or social approval. As you continue this practice, you may notice that the guidance you receive through dreams, intuitions, and synchronicities begins to challenge some of the fundamental assumptions you've held about what your life should look like. Jung understood that true transformation often requires what he called the courage to disappoint, the willingness to disappoint others' expectations in service of your authentic path. Take Catherine, a successful lawyer who had built her entire identity around being reliable, responsible, and rational. After 6 months of practicing Jung's 6 words, her dreams began showing her images of herself, teaching, writing, and working with children. These visions felt both foreign and deeply familiar, as if they were memories of a life she had never lived but had always known was possible. The guidance wasn't telling Catherine to immediately quit her law practice, but rather to begin incorporating more teaching and mentoring into her current work. She started volunteering to teach legal literacy to underserved communities, began writing articles about women's rights, and discovered a passion for advocacy that felt more aligned than traditional corporate law. Eventually, this led her to transition into educational law, where she could combine her legal expertise with her newfound calling to empower others. Jung believed that when women trust their unconscious wisdom, they become what he called agents of cultural transformation. By living authentically, rather than reactively, they create new possibilities not just for themselves, but for other women who witness their courage to trust internal guidance over external expectations. The practice of speaking these 6 words before sleep becomes a daily ritual of remembering who you are beyond all the roles, responsibilities, and identities that may have accumulated over time. It's a gentle but powerful way of saying to your deepest self, "I'm listening. I'm ready. I trust you to show me the way." If you've been inspired by Jung's wisdom and want to continue exploring the intersection of psychology and feminine awakening, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit that notification bell. We're diving deep into transformative practices that can help you reclaim your authentic power and live from your deepest wisdom. Your journey of awakening matters, and we're honored to be part of it. As you begin this practice tonight, remember that you're not just speaking words. You're participating in an ancient conversation between your conscious mind and the vast intelligence that has been guiding women throughout history. You're reclaiming your birthright to trust your own knowing, to value your inner wisdom, and to live from the deep feminine principle that knows exactly who you came here to be. Trust the process. Trust the practice. Most importantly, trust yourself. Your unconscious mind is already preparing to guide you toward the life that's been waiting for you all along. All you need to do is speak the words, "I trust my unconscious to guide me," and allow the transformation to unfold naturally. The wisdom you seek isn't somewhere out there. It's already within you, waiting for your invitation to emerge. These 6 words are that invitation. Use them well and watch as your entire life begins to align with the truth of who you really are.